When I first started playing drums, I was told by many people not to work on playing solos. Don't worry about playing solos, they would say. You'll never have to play them. Nobody wants to hear a drum solo anyways. You should be working on your groove. You shouldn't be working on your chops. You should be working on your feel. And while groove and feel is all well and good, I'm here to push back on that and say that a lot of that advice was BS, because I've had to play a drum solo in many different contexts and in almost every single band that I've been in. And I'm here to tell you that if you're a working drummer, if you keep playing this instrument, even if you haven't had to play a solo yet, you probably will at some point, and it behooves you to work on it now so that you're not scared later. I'm certainly not going to put myself forward as some sort of amazing soloist, but I will say that at this stage in the game, most of the time, I'm not scared to play a drum solo, and for me, that's huge. I used to be terrified to have to take a solo, but I've done it enough and I've practiced enough different types of solos that if the situation arises, which I found it often does, I'm at least comfortable playing solos, and in the best of times, it's actually some of the most fun I have on the instrument. So if you don't work on drum solos, or you feel like you don't have to, or maybe you're scared to play solos, I'm here to tell you that A, you shouldn't be scared, B, you probably should work on them, and then C, I want to give you some tips on how to get over that fear and enjoy playing solos. Now, as I said, there are many different scenarios in which you might have to play a drum solo, so there are different types of solos that we'll talk about in a minute. I'll give you a few stories from my own soloing past, I guess, so feel free to skip ahead if you don't like the stories. The first group I was in where I had to play solos, I think was in high school when I was in my high school's pep band, and the very first song that we would have to play each night when the basketball players would run out onto the court is a song that had an open drum solo in it, and there was really no minimum or maximum length, so I could go for 30 seconds, I could go for 30 minutes if I wanted. I never quite went that far, but there was a period of time in which the solos got more and more elaborate, and when I finally got comfortable doing it, when I finally got over my deadly fear of it initially, it was some of the most fun I had, and it was cool because the situation we were in, we were up on an elevated platform above the whole crowd, and so, you know, it was great to have a sold out show where, of course, everyone's there just for the basketball team, but to us, to the pep band, felt like, hey, we've got a sold out crowd every night. Even though I wasn't technically incredibly gifted, I did make sure that my solos were at least interesting. So I would bring in all sorts of percussion instruments, and every week I'd be thinking that week, okay, this weekend, what am I going to do differently in my solo? People who came and watched the game last week are gonna be there again. They're gonna hear this long drum solo. What can I do to make it different, make it more interesting? So I'd be stealing tricks from Neil Peart. I'd be stealing tricks from Chris Coleman, some of my favorite soloists, Dennis Chambers, just seeing like, what can I sneak in there to at least keep things interesting? The next group I had to frequently solo in was a particular summer, also when I was in high school. I was playing frequently with a blues guitar player. This is where I really cut my teeth learning some like bluesy blues. So I was playing a lot of shuffles, and this guitar player who played many solos himself at one point broke a string. He left the stage and, you know, kind of growls into the microphone, "Cole Paramore on the drums." And so I just started playing, right? You know, if someone says your name on the drums, that's your cue that you either just played a solo or you're probably about to play a solo. So I just started playing a solo. He loved it, and from then on out, I would have these long solos every single night, to the point where it really irked me, because he would just get off the stage and sit in the audience and he would watch, and I'd be playing for maybe 5 minutes, and I'd like really be trying to wrap it up, blah 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 blah, and I'd be looking straight at him, and he'd just be sitting there. So I would play some really long solos that I can't guarantee stayed interesting the whole way through, but I at least fought my way through them. That was the second time. In one of my current bands that I've been playing in for a long time, called Harrison B, there is a song that we play that has a long breakdown on the album version, and live we play, I play basically an open drum solo over a certain progression. So the progression's kind of doom 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 doom. So I'm playing a bio with my feet, and then I'm soloing for a couple minutes. It's got to be 2 or 3 minutes on top of that. And then there's a whole section where I interact with the guitar as well. So again, it's a whole thing. I've also been in numerous jazz bands, and if you're ever in a jazz group, there's a high probability that you are either going to have to take some short 4 or 8 bar solos, or you may even have to take open solos if you are comfortable doing that. I also play sometimes with a function band, and there's an 8-bar drum solo that is integrated into the song conga. And of course, I have to be ready to integrate that into what's already being played along with a click and everyone else on stage. Other than that, as you know, I demo products and do reviews and that sort of thing on this channel. So those demos are kind of like mini drum solos that I have to play as well. And furthermore, there are situations where I just want to sit down and play a little bit, or maybe someone says, oh, Cole, I hear you're a drummer, or, you know, Cole, do you want to just play some drums? And I'll have to sit down, and that situation is like a little drum solo. So the point of all of this is that there are many different situations in which you are going to have to play solo drums, and I have found that in most of the bands that I've been in, I've had to play some sort of solo at some point. So let's talk about a few different types of drum solos and then how you might practice each one. The first thing that I would consider a drum solo is what might be more accurately called a drum break. This is a maybe 2, 4, or maybe an 8 measure phrase within a song where everyone else drops out and all you're really supposed to hear is drums. The most famous drum break would undoubtedly be what's called the Amen break, and there's a whole history behind that drum break. But basically, it's a drum break in an old funk tune that has been sampled to death by modern hip-hop producers. But in context of the actual song, what is happening there is there's a funk tune surrounding this drum break, and then everyone drops out and the drummer just keeps playing. The key here is to just play what you're playing, maybe with minor variations. Oftentimes, if there's a 4 measure funk break, drummers will freeze up and think, oh, I gotta do something crazy. I've got this limited amount of time. I need to go bananas. And it's exactly the opposite. Because you have that limited amount of time, just let everyone else drop out and listen to the drums for probably the first time. Everyone else was just hearing drums as part of the whole. And when everyone else drops out, you don't need to change what you're doing. You can just keep playing the same thing, and it's going to be fresh to everyone's ears because they weren't listening to you before. So in those situations, I would highly encourage you to just do less and play basically what you were playing, maybe with minor variations. The way you can practice this is by setting up 4-bar loops for yourself. Just play a groove for 4 measures and then take 4 measures as the drum break and stick to what you were doing before with just minor variations. The second type of drum solo I'm calling the X-bar solo, and this is a solo that could, again, like a drum break, be any number of measures, but it's usually predefined. So it might be a 4-bar solo, it might be an 8-bar solo, it might be a 16-bar solo. Usually that's built into a tune, and the point is to shine more of a spotlight on the drummer. This is a situation where you do want to elevate what you're playing. You don't necessarily want to just play the same thing for the entire 8 measures or 16 measures or whatever it is. But I want to really emphasize and stress here that you do not need to put everything that you've ever learned into this solo. What you want to do is keep the general vibe and the general energy of what you were playing before into your solo, but elevate it and add some more fills, add some more texture, add some more variation. This is a situation where, again, you don't want to just go bananas, but you do want to indicate to the audience that this is a drum feature, and this is a chance for you to incorporate some of your soloing vocabulary and some of your improvisational vocabulary into a structured piece of time. Making sure that everyone else can still keep time to your solo is paramount. So make sure that everyone can follow what you're doing, keep it light, and don't worry about putting every single thing you've ever learned into this solo. The last type of drum solo is what we would call an open solo. And for a lot of people, this is really what they're thinking of when they think drum solo. This could be in the context of a band, of a performance. This could just be on your own. This could be at a drum festival. This is where time can fluctuate. You can play as short as you want, you can play as long as you want, and you can really take people on a journey with just the drum set. Examples of this would be like John Bonham in Moby Dick in the context of a song, or any drum festival performance you've ever seen where someone just starts playing. Those would be open solos. And if you really want to develop your ability to play open solos, I highly recommend checking out JP Bouvet. He is a fantastic soloist, absolutely one of my favorites, and better yet, he really is generous with his information and his thought process and what he's thinking while he solos and how he structures solos. But I am going to give you a couple of tips here and some methods for practicing open solos. First of all, if the thought of playing an open solo scares you and you're intimidated and you think you can't do it, I would ask you, how often do you ever practice playing open solos? And if the answer is rarely or never, then it makes total sense. Why would you be comfortable playing open solos if you never practice them? So a good way to start is to just totally leave all of your expectations aside. Just have zero expectations for yourself. Don't worry, don't get self-conscious. Set a timer for a minute and just play whatever comes to mind for 1 minute and then stop right at the 1 minute mark. Do this 5 times in a row and you will probably have played more solos than you've played in months or maybe even years at that point. In these solos, focus more on keeping it interesting and keeping it engaging for yourself and your potential listeners. You don't have to worry about playing vocabulary that you don't have yet. Really make sure that you're sticking to things that you know how to play. No matter how experienced or inexperienced you are, I guarantee that you have a skill set that can be used to at least keep someone engaged for a minute. So a couple things you might want to be thinking about are using elements of contrast in your solo. So you might want to shift from playing really loudly to playing really softly, or playing really fast to playing really slow, playing on the toms versus playing on the cymbals. You also might want to think about using repetition in your solos. Saying something multiple times adds emphasis. Saying something multiple times adds emphasis, and it will stick in the listener's mind more clearly. Repetition is at the heart of everything that we enjoy about music, so you want to use it in your solos as well. You don't want your solos to be truly random. So you can add in little hooks and little phrases and little things that you play over and over. Don't worry too much about your audience getting bored with that. If you play it intentionally, it will act like a chorus of a song and it'll stick in people's minds. That's more interesting than just going crazy for a minute straight. So here are the big takeaways. First of all, there is probably a higher chance than you think that you are going to have to play a drum solo at some point in time. However, you shouldn't be scared of this. You can develop your soloing ability separate from the rest of your drumming vocabulary, and I promise you that you can get over that fear. I was definitely scared of playing solos, and now much less so. But don't worry about your vocabulary not being sufficient to play something interesting. I guarantee that you can play something interesting even if your name isn't Dave Weckl or Thomas Lang. But most of all, practice playing solos, and that might be the biggest takeaway, is that you can and should actually practice playing solos using the methods that I just described. So hopefully that is of help to some of you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.